The second one is the opposite extreme, and this is the independent model. Both theology and science operate in their own unique realm. There is no possibility of overlap. But if there's no possibility of overlap, then there can be no conflict. Because science deals with an area or a discipline of which theology can never make an assertion about. And therefore, without overlap, there's no possibility of conflict. So the next point there, science deals with natural events under the authority of experimentation, and we can call it and reason as well, to understand the structure and operation of nature. But theology deals with the inner life, issues of forgiveness, guilt, meaning, values, under the authority of revelation, to fulfill the will of God. But when the Bible makes assertions about the observable world, it should be understood either metaphorically or as accommodation, so that when God revealed His will in Scripture, it was revealed in such a way that it would accommodate the understanding of the particular culture and the time in which that revelation occurred. So that by reading the Bible, you would not understand that the earth was spherical. It would still be flat, because the people of that day believed that it was flat. So it's consistent with their belief system. The third one is the interventionist model. Now, here it becomes a little bit, from all the models, the conflict and independence are two extremes, and generally everyone has those two categories. From here, the middle ground gets a little blurry. The interventionist model, God intervenes at specific points in the history of the universe. Call it miracles. The ones that are given, the origin of the universe, the origin of life, the rise of consciousness or soul, and then the emergence of new species, to bring about certain features which He creates. So He creates the universe, that at certain points He miraculously forms different structures, organisms, life forms. The next one, science specializes in discovering laws that best explain observable phenomena, but cannot meaningfully explain these key moments. Why? Because science deals with the relationship between cause and effect of natural events. But if it is a divine intervention, then there is no natural cause for that event. So if the event is the origin of life, and if God directly created, then you cannot provide a scenario where there can be natural causes to account for that event. Because the sequence has been broken. There's an intervention or interruption. Thus, this inability becomes evidence for certain theological assertions. So that when you talk of evidence for the existence of God, you're arguing that science cannot account for certain phenomena. In fact, the more you understand the phenomenon, the more the gap widens between a naturalistic explanation for that event, and therefore it provides evidence for design. Because there's only three categories, right? Chance, law, and design. If it cannot be law, cannot be chance, then it has to be by design. And so, last one. You ever heard of the intelligent design movement? Right? A couple of you? Some of you? Okay. Intelligent design movement would fall into this particular place. And so here you have Dembski, Meyer, and the Bandy, right? The almost black box, where science and evidence for design. And the way it works is that you negate chance and law as possible explanations, and you argue for design. The last point there, conflict arises when science oversteps its boundary by making claims which are more philosophical rather than empirical concerning these key moments. In other words, science operates under the assumption of naturalism, that you cannot allow the supernatural to be a possible explanation for an event. And because of that, no matter how absurd the explanation, it has to be naturalistic, because science doesn't deal with the miraculous. And so when certain statements are made about these special moments that are driven by their methodological naturalism, then conflict arises. But if science stays in its own realm, then conflict does not arise. The last one is the integration model. God created the universe fully gifted with the potential to produce the rich diversity of life that we observe. Because nature is fully gifted, God does not need to intervene within the workings of nature. Here's the key difference between the two. In this model, there is no divine intervention. God does not step into space and time to miraculously create natural events. Why? Because he has fully gifted all matter energy in the very beginning with all the diverse interactions that are necessary to produce the structures of all the organisms that will come about. All divine input is front-ended. He no longer needs to step in. Which means now science can discover how the universe originated, how life originated, soul, and all of that. Because it's an unbroken link between the beginning of the universe to all the complex entities that you see today. That's a huge difference. Now, if we wanted to apply this to the evolution-creation debate, which is one of the issues that is presented, there are three categories that arise: the conflict, interventionist, and then the independent integration model, which there's no difference between the two. For the conflict model, the Earth is relatively young. Creation occurred in 7 literal days. This would be the institution of creation research, John Wickham, Henry Morris. God directly created every major species, especially man, accepts microevolution but rejects macroevolution. Natural selection incapable of introducing the new information necessary to explain major transitions in life forms. Right? These are all the miraculous events occurred in a short period of time. Little global flood, and then Genesis should be read literally. Genesis should be read literally. That's the early Earth, the young Earth view. The interventionist model, the older creationism, Earth is as old as science tells us. The Bible does not make statements concerning the age of the Earth. And then most believe God directly introduced new genetic information at specific points, origin of life and major transitions in species. Others believe that God directly introduced a non-physical component to the human being, but evolution by itself can account for the physical aspect of man. So that as long as you leave the soul alone, science can go wherever it wants. But ultimately, you do not want human beings to be nothing but matter/energy. And then the early Genesis should not be read as historical. And then the last model, theistic evolution, God created the universe fully gifted to evolve into the universe we see today and to produce the richness of life we see today. Everything's front-ended once again. Unbroken line from non-living matter to rational human beings. Common descent from organic matter from the beginning to, let's say, rational beings on the back end. Natural selection fully capable